Hello and welcome to our second episode of Monday Breakdowns, where we look at a college lacrosse game from the weekend and kind of do a deep dive on it. I know it's not Monday. Apologies for a busy day yesterday, but wanted to get this up. Today we're looking at Georgetown versus Notre Dame. Big overtime victory for the Hoyas, 11-10 final score. Really good game. Some big thoughts on it. Early season game, guys are flying around, guys are pumped up. I think the quality of college lacrosse is higher than it's ever been. I think watching all the games around the country, a lot of good teams, a lot of good players. It's just really impressive lacrosse. Georgetown wasn't afraid in this game. I think that was kind of the biggest takeaway. A lot of seniors on that Georgetown team, a lot of guys who are four-time conference champions and have won a lot of games in their career, and it showed. Not an easy place to play in South Bend, especially coming off the championship and a banner raising and all that stuff. It's a tough environment to go into, and Georgetown, right from the jump, you could tell weren't afraid. Notre Dame still won the ground ball battle, but I thought Georgetown did a pretty good job in that scenario. Notre Dame's going to win the ground ball battle against most teams, so you just got to make sure you don't get smoked. And, I think Georgetown did a good job of that. And then some really impressive coaching, I thought, on both sides. If you like defensive lacrosse, this was as good as it gets. I think you see 11-10, not the lowest scoring game in the world, but a lot of power plays late and some other stuff. I thought the defensive play in this game was as good as you're going to see. I wanted to start by just going through the overtime period because I think it is kind of indicative of some other things that happened throughout the game. So Notre Dame wins the face-off. They actually dominated the face-off X throughout the game and call a timeout. So coming out of the timeout, Georgetown decides to put a short stick on Jake Taylor, which they did throughout the game, but not all the time, which I thought was smart. When you just stick with one strategy, teams can start to adjust. They'd kind of pick and choose their spots about sending the short stick to Taylor. They do it in overtime. Pretty good strategy. Taylor sets great picks. One thing to watch around the country is when guys are setting picks, if they're not making contact with the defender, basically if they're not actually getting anything out of the pick, it's really just not doing anything for the offense. And there's slip picks and all these other terms that you'll hear about ways of doing pick and rolls. If you're trying to set a pick and you're not getting contact, you're just not getting much. And one thing Jake Taylor does a great job of is he gets contact. Notre Dame is ready for Taylor to get the short stick. They do the same thing every time. They get him to Pat Kavanaugh. They set a really good pick, and they get Pat on a short stick. Advantage Notre Dame. This happens again in overtime. Advantage Notre Dame. 16 Leary, the short stick for Georgetown, who did a nice job throughout the game. He gets onto Pat Kavanaugh in overtime. Georgetown is patient. They let their short sticks play, which, again, they did throughout the game. They switched a lot. Thought they did a great job in those instances. And, they kind of just allowed their short sticks to play. They wait for Pat to roll, which he does a lot, very, very effectively. He scored on a rollback, and then they send the double team. They get their long stick back on Pat, have kind of survived this scenario on the short stick and also eaten up some clock. And then ball goes to Dobson. Dobson versus Dylan Hess was the story of the game. Hess was incredible on the ball. Dobson, those guys are warriors, man. They went at it all day. He got a good look in overtime, starting down the alley, getting into Hess a little bit, getting back to his left hand. And Georgetown was just opportunistic and aggressive with their slides when they needed to. Ended up getting a tip on Dobson's shot, goes out of bounds. Then they survive the chaos. That's the thing that's going to kill you with Notre Dame is they're so good in between whistles and, at the kind of off-script plays. They get a big save from Anderson Moore, the goalie for Georgetown, who I thought was real solid. Get a save from him in overtime, a shot that Notre Dame probably wants back. But they get a huge save and a big stop for their team, go play offense. So now Georgetown has the ball. When I was lucky to play for Bobby Benson, now the head coach at Providence, he would talk about the number of times that you switch sides of the field from left to right and also switch sides from behind to up top. And it watched Georgetown play, very well coached on offense. They switch fields a lot and they switch above and behind a lot. So their first possession of overtime, they bring a short stick. to TJ Haley, try to see what they can get in the big little. They do that pretty much every time. I would do the same thing. He's a dynamic player. Big littles are really tough. They don't get anything, so they throw back to Krogan, number 24, short stick. Let him have a go on the Notre Dame short stick. This is where I thought Georgetown did a good job. They were aggressive on the short stick matchups, but they didn't let the ball die. So Krogan goes, kind of sees what he can get, doesn't have anything, so moves it. So it goes now to the other side of the field. So now we've been below the goal line, back up above the goal line, moving it to the other side of the field. The ball swings through X. So now we're behind the goal line again, back to the original side. So now we've switched sides of the field again. And the ball swings to Aiden Carroll, number 12 for Georgetown, starting attackman on a short stick. Goes to work on the short stick in kind of the invert low angle, waits for the over-the-head check, tucks the ball, puts the game on ice for Georgetown, finishes it. Bench goes nuts, as they should. Huge win on the road for the Hoyas. I thought that was indicative of what Georgetown was doing all day. Switching sides of the field, a ton of play behind the net. Inverts were a huge part of their game plan. And even when they weren't drawing slides, they kept the ball moving, which was important schematically and also psychologically, which I'll discuss later. So let's start with kind of the offense of Notre Dame versus the defense of Georgetown. I decided to kind of think about, if you're a defensive coach, what are you worried about with Notre Dame, in kind of order of magnitude. I think the first part is chaos and just the off schedule kind of crazy plays that can happen with Notre Dame, and that's when Pat and Chris are really at their best. And that Pat is always looking for Chris. They're so dynamic. They shoot the ball so well, especially Chris. You got to find him. And I thought Georgetown did an outstanding job of limiting chaos in the whole game. They gave up nothing in transition. They got the game to 6-on-6, and they really made Notre Dame earn all their goals, which obviously they're capable of doing. But it's one of those things, if you can't control the chaos against Notre Dame, you don't even have a chance. Pat Cav, Big Little, super dangerous, very dynamic player, obviously, a great feeder and a great scorer from behind the net. When you get him on the short sticks, it's tough. They pressed out a lot, really tried to limit the touches of Pat behind the net, which I think was very smart. Ty Banks, Canadian from Coquitlam, was guarding Pat most of the day. Did his best work when Pat didn't have the ball, just limiting his touches, but getting out to the end line, that was important. Dobson sweeping to his left hand, a great feeder, very good at looking through the defense, and obviously he can shoot it as well as anybody in the country. Maybe him and Graham Bundy would be up there. And then the last thing is Jake Taylor indoors. He was very good in this game. You just always have to find him and have the other guys all have eyes for him. They're going to throw it in there, and obviously we've all seen what he can do when he gets it. The story of the game was Eric Dobson versus Dylan Hess. Two seniors, two guys who have played a lot of ball, won a lot of games, and two guys who are going to be playing, at the next level for a long time. Two Warriors, man. They played a ton of shifts, especially in the second half. It was all going through them. Putting a short stick on Dobson is an aggressive strategy, but if you got a guy like Hess, it really twists the field because it's a 2-for-1. It means you get your pull on somebody else, and it's a trend I think you might see with some of these short stick defensive midfielders. I wrote a little bit about this on the website a couple weeks ago. These D-middies are just better than they've ever been. These guys are awesome players, and Hess is up there with the best of them. One thing they did specifically well was they got Dobson down the alley, and they got all of the Notre Dame Dodgers down the alley. Why that was important was because they were pressing out so aggressively on X, really left them with no options a lot of the time. When they did slide, it was often the open guy was the top center man. So if you're dodging down the alley, the open man was basically directly behind you, directly up your back. Very hard to get the ball back to him for any sort of an assist or a shot. Your only option is to roll out, throw it back, and flip the field. And in that time, Georgetown scrambled. And again, in the shot clock era, stuff like that takes time. It's not necessarily as effective as it used to be. I think most of the good teams want to keep the ball moving forward, throw it forward. So the press out at X was super effective. Dobson was very good on double moves when he could get into Hess and then roll back, or even better when he could just kind of shrug them off a little bit and try to get switch hands without having to roll, that's when it was tough, and a couple of bad bounces there. He probably could have had a few more, but in general, Hess's ability to take the contact from Dobson, who brings it right to you, and stay on the ball, or at least stay in an area where he could impact Dobson, and his ability to look through the defense was incredibly impressive. And again, just a great battle between those two guys. I think there's an interesting topic of, if you have one of these guys like Hess who's very good, should you start setting picks? I think, that sounds crazy to some people when you have a guy like Dobson who's going to be probably a first-team All-American to set a pick for him when he has a short stick. I just don't know if it's, as simple as it used to be where, short stick is good, long stick is bad. I think there's a lot of long sticks in the country that Dobson's going to run right by, and the best short sticks, like I said, are really good. So, I think you might see that next time. Also wanted to mention on the 7th Georgetown goal, Hess goes down and sets a pick behind the goal for Haley while Dobson is covering him. This is something to watch throughout the season. A lot of teams are doing this now. Instead of setting picks with their D-middies near the box like you used to see, now you see those picks pretty much anywhere, especially behind the goal. And it's just harder to stop behind the goal. So why not? I thought that was smart by Georgetown. Got them a free goal in a game where goals were hard to come by. So the most important thing was, again, the shutoff at X. Ty Banks, Canadian, doing a great job, really just making it work, limiting Pat's touches. And I do believe that if all things were equal, behind the net's better than above. So even when Pat was getting the ball up above the net, I think if you're Georgetown, you'd rather have that than behind. I think it's easier to slide to, and your goalie can see the ball the whole way, which is important. Notre Dame had some chances early that they didn't cash. They're going to score those later in the year. I think they're probably frustrated with some of those. Georgetown made a few mistakes in the pick game early, and then they just got them cleaned up. And they just didn't make any more mistakes. I think defensively, this was pretty much a mistake-free game for most parts of the second half, and I think that's something that Georgetown and Notre Dame do well. If you're going to score on them, you're going to have to make good plays and stack them on top of each other, and I thought that was good. I want to talk about Jake Taylor. We had a chance to watch the Final Four game last year with the Boston Cannons. We were all together, and I remember Jake scored that twister, and I just said, Americans are evolving. And it's true. These are just like Canadian-type plays that he's making. He had the behind-the-back first goal, leaner on the second goal, another behind-the-back that became a Kobe assist, picked up the rebound and scored, and then a pretty slick wall pass. I made the joke, it's like if Joey Chestnut was from Moose Jaw, or the next Joey Chestnut was from Moose Jaw. It's just super impressive. And I'm mostly joking. There's been a ton of incredibly skilled Americans over the years as well. But if you had to guess, most people would probably think he's got such a Canadian skill set, and he was very important for them in this game. And I think it's big for Notre Dame that they clearly are comfortable when he gets a short stick and they get into good offense, because we've seen that cripple other teams before. Lastly, something I've been kind of thinking about, talking about, writing about this year. Georgetown switched a lot of their picks, especially behind the goal, especially late in the shot clock. And I thought pretty much without exception, it was very effective. Worst case scenario, it just takes time and forces Notre Dame to try to get themselves into some more good offense. And, if you have very good short sticks, I think it's effective. And I just think fans should watch out for that the rest of the year. Teams might be more willing to give up matchups than they ever have been before. Switching sides of the field to Georgetown offense, Notre Dame defense, Georgetown handled the psychology of this game very well. So what I mean by that, Notre Dame doesn't want to slide like a lot of other good teams. Their on-ball play is terrific. And when you get into games like that, it can be hard as an offense because if you're dodging on a short stick, they're not sliding. You feel like you have to score or have to draw a slide before you move the ball sometimes, and that's one of the advantages of the slow to slide defense is you kind of play chicken with the offense a little bit. I thought Georgetown did a good job of not falling into that. They kept the ball moving, and their isolation plays were 5-6 seconds instead of 15 seconds. They would dodge as hard as they could. If they didn't like it, throw it forward, and they, again, like I said, did a good job switching fields and switching above and below the goal. Haley Big Little got them 3 goals. He was very good, puts a ton of pressure on your defense, feels like a lot of other great feeders in that sense where if you make a mistake somewhere, he's going to find it. And then they got 4 goals off the short stick invert, either low in the wing or right behind the net. I would guess you're going to see more of that coming at Notre Dame. Their long stick play is very good. Their shorties I thought were incredible, but they asked them to do a lot. So if you're gonna ask your shorties to play a lot and to guard the ball with limited slides, I think Georgetown did the right thing where pretty much every possession they would set a pick for Haley, see what they could get, and then throw back and go at the short stick defenders in the low wings and the inverts, and they're just tough, and they made some great plays there. They had 2 power play goals, 2 kind of other goals which are mostly above the goal, but Notre Dame seems pretty dialed in, in from the midfield dodges and it's going to be tough to score from them, and obviously Entenmann just kind of shrinks the field from up top, where once you start going down the alley, you don't really feel like it's a good shot pretty quickly. Want to mention Graham Bundy. The first shot, man, that's just legit. Like, he's maybe 15, 16 yards, flat-footed, going top corner on probably the best goalie in college lacrosse, if not one of the 2 or 3 best. He just can really shoot it, and it has like kind of Steph Curry like gravity where he really pulls people out. I think you see that on the man up too, where stuff is more open than it might be for other teams because you have to guard them out so far. You see that sometimes in the PLL where you're guarding out to the 2-point line, and that opens up everything in between. It's the same thing here. You have to respect him so far out, and I thought he played well, didn't force it, had a nice goal off the ball, had a nice assist, and he was very good. Notre Dame. Hard to kind of differentiate some of their defenders. Ben Ramsey, I thought, was notable. 2 caused turnovers, 1 on an over-the-head check, 1 on the face-off, kind of a can opener. Got beat on the last goal, probably wants that one back. But again, he made some of those same plays on the over-the-head check throughout the game, so you kind of have to live with it. The Notre Dame guys go for those checks more than other teams, and more than other teams would probably be comfortable with, but they also make them more than other teams. So it's just kind of part of the experience. And then, Entenmann is going to be a big factor for them later this year. He's great. Probably wanted one or 2 of those back, but I don't think anyone in the country is worried about his play. One thing I did want to mention on that, Georgetown went late into the shot clocks all throughout the game. I think it actually was effective. One, it just limited turnovers and stuff like that, but also they didn't force a lot of bad shots late in the clock that let Entenmann kind of find a rhythm. Not very many shots on goal for Georgetown at all. Entenmann made 8 saves and they scored 11 goals, so kind of 20-ish, 19 shots on goal. That's pretty low for a college game, and I thought they did a good job of working for great ones. And shot clocks aren't the worst thing against Notre Dame. It keeps them keeps the ball out of their offensive stick. It limits transition for the most part because typically at the end of the shot clock you're going to dump it, get your ride set up, and it doesn't let Entenmann get hot because he can ruin your day pretty quick when he starts seeing the ball. Last thing I want to say, a lot of penalties in the fourth quarter. The Kavanaughs are so dynamic in the fourth quarter. When the chips are down, probably not anyone else you really want on your team. They got super aggressive in the fourth, and it was almost all positive. Pat scores the last goal. Chris got hit in the head like 4 times, drawing penalties. I think the reviews for headshots are going to lead to a lot of penalties. There's a lot of incidental head contact out there. I respect and appreciate the player safety angle, and I think because of that, I'm probably okay with the rule. But we saw a lot of reviews there in the fourth quarter, and reviews are a Pandora's box for sure. If there's certainly benefits to not having them, but there's also some downsides of having them. So I didn't hate any of the calls in particular, but when we start reviewing penalties, you're going to start, I think, probably seeing a lot more. Both teams I thought were very effective on the power play. The numbers bear that out. 3 for 5 for Notre Dame and 2 for 4 for Georgetown. Notre Dame does a great job of just keeping things really simple on the power play. You saw that last year in the national championship game. They don't run a ton of crazy stuff, but with Pat at the top, Chris and Dobson on the shooters, you have everything you need. You got your skip feeders, and you got some legit range, and you saw that one that in the fourth quarter, Pat just catches it, steps into it, and he shoots the ball as well as probably anyone in the country. So that's kind of it for the wrap up. Again, thought this was very well played. Georgetown needed a W, and they got one. I don't think anyone is really worried about Notre Dame. They'll watch the film. Behind closed doors, they're probably okay with the loss and having a little bit of adversity here early in the season. But college lacrosse is improving. This is it's just really impressive play and impressive coaching, and this game was a pleasure to watch. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. Stay tuned for more.